Welcome to It's a Broker Thing podcast, brought to you by Bluestone Home Loans. Each episode will dive into market updates, practical insights and real stories for brokers who want to stay ahead, build stronger relationships and grow their business. Let's dive in. Interest rates are up, the pressure's building, and for brokers, this is a moment in time where they can move from a guide to a trusted advisor. In today's episode, we'll talk about how interest rates rising are impacting brokers. We'll look at how borrowers are feeling, and we'll ask how brokers can be a trusted guide for their clients. Joining me today is Rachelle Kroon, founder and managing director of Sphere Home Loans. I'm your host, Tony McRae. Rachelle, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, right off the bat, I have to declare, Rachelle and I worked together for a very short period of time back in our banking days. So you've sort of seen it from both sides. You've seen the banking side and you've seen the broking side. How did that journey from banker to broker go for you?
Yeah, well, I guess I was in the third-party section of the bank, so the mortgage broker section. So I was never actually client-facing, but I was broker-facing. So I guess the luxury that I got from all those years was getting to work with some of the best brokers in the country, which was a real privilege. So I guess when I started my business, I had a lot of experience in credit and understanding how banks worked and understanding how everything worked, I guess, under the hood and under the bonnet. And I'd had the privilege of seeing so many great brokers, run their businesses. And I had a really clear idea of what I liked and what I wanted to do and I guess what I didn't want to be. But what I hadn't done before was actually being client-facing. So it was a big learning experience for me, having always been one removed. It's a very different experience when you're actually at the coalface talking to clients. It's a very different experience than just finding the solution.
And how did you go? Because you're absolutely right. It is completely different. So how did you go about educating yourself and just finding that space to deal with clients?
Oh, I hired really quickly. So as soon as I started, I hired, and you know what you're good at and you know what you're not good at. So what I did was hired people very quickly that I guess were the gaps that I didn't have. And two of those women that I hired, 12 years ago now are still with me. So we've had that journey. I guess the three of us have had that journey all together and we've grown the business. But I think making the transition from, I guess, banker to broker is, it's a great one. You get so much experience before you go, but you also are learning along the way. And I see so many bankers that come over that have been, lenders in the branch, and they come over with a different set of skills. They come over and, having a client base and, having had so much client experience, but they've got the different things to learn, like how to actually manage a business and how to grow staff and how to coach. And they're probably the skills I had, but I learnt the other skills like, talking to clients and taking them on a journey.
It's a bold move because you're still young, but you were really young when you did that. And not only did you just go, "Hey, I'm going to start a broking business, but I'm going to hire people. I'm going to bring them on board," and that responsibility level just jumps to whole new levels.
Oh, look, it really does, and like I said, I'd worked in that space and I'd seen other people do it. So it's, you're not pioneering, you've seen other people do it and you can kind of learn from their journey. So that was a really privileged place to come from, but it was a big risk and you walk away from a big salary and you really need to back yourself when you start a business. So, that was 13 years ago in June. But I think for me, it was, I guess the skills that I had I felt were transferable, and the things I learned, you just learn along the way. But it was a huge risk.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Sphere Home Loans and the sorts of customers that you look after, or specialties or anything like that.
Yeah. So we've got about 8 mortgage brokers now. We've probably got a diverse client base, but the majority of our clients would probably be from a younger demographic. We probably attract a more aspirational and financially responsible client. They want a relationship. They want guidance. They've got big dreams and they want somebody to go with them on that journey. So that's probably, even though we have, whether it's first home buyers, investors, they all want a relationship, and that's probably the thing that they have in common. As a business, we run a salaried model for mortgage brokers. It's a little bit different to, I guess, your traditional contractor model. And I think for me as the director, that gives me a little bit more control, and it gives me a little bit more, ability to make sure that every customer or client that comes through our doors gets exactly the same level of service and the same client experience. So I think something I was really passionate about when I started the business, and having seen, a different angles, I really wanted to be that guide for the client, and I really wanted to be the customer to be the center of everything we do. And I've been absolutely non-negotiable about that. Everyone in our business is client focused. That's just the only thing that every staff member has in common, is that they're client focused, and our customers feel that. So we have a system that guides people through from when they're buying their first home to when they're building their medical centre 10 years later.
Yeah, sure. And you were recognised last year as a finalist in the AMAs for Best Customer Service, which Bluestone happened to sponsor as well.
Thank you.
Which was is a great achievement on that front.
It was really special for us.
Let's jump into what I'd really like to delve in today. So we've turned the corner. Maybe not a great one, but we're in a interest rate upwards trend at the moment, and there may be more to come. As a broker, what's changed for you? As we've if we go back to last year, we were actually thinking we're in a downward trend, and it sort of turned on a dime. And so, what have you had to do in your business, and it's changed for you in this changed environment?
Yeah, so this is the time as a broker that you've got the opportunity to really stand out. These are the moments of truth that clients think about. They think about how you interacted with them at a time of uncertainty, at a time that was tough. And I really relate it back to COVID. So COVID for us was probably the first time that our business went through something like that. And when that happened, I called other directors of mortgage brokerages that had navigated clients through the GFC. I wasn't in business then, so I didn't know how to handle it. And I contacted other people and said, what do you do? And they gave us, some advice, and we guided our clients through that time. I had all of my brokers on lockdown just contacting clients. That's all we did. All through those lockdown months was contacting clients and had conversations about what that meant for them and how they felt. And that's what people remember. They don't remember whether you saved them 10 basis points on a product. They remember the way you make them feel in tough times. So basically, our business has doubled since the time of COVID, but the systems and the strategy is the same. So when rates started to rise, a couple of months ago, and then we've obviously had the uncertainty of what's happening from a global perspective, and people are feeling scared. And so we're contacting them. And you've got a big client base. You need to have great systems and processes in place to be able to do that, but you just have to do it. You've got to sit down and contact everybody, and people want to know that you're there for them, and they want to know that their strategy still matters, and not to delve off course of a strategy because of uncertainty. So that's where we come in as guides.
And has there been a bit of a pivot from acquisition to servicing, or are you still balancing the two?
Well, we actually had our, we haven't had a dip in applications. We, as a business, we process 150 applications a month. So these phone calls that we're navigating, we can't stop the other thing. It's another process we need to do. So we usually have enough staff to cover, contacts of our clients twice a year on top of the normal acquisition. But this is different. So it's about, everyone needs to have the right staffing in place in their teams to be able to make these phone calls. So it is a challenge being able to contact all our clients while they're while they're still working on acquisition, because nothing's slowed down. There's no slowdown in volume while this is happening. So, but it is really important that, and I have to admit, my team are probably working a little bit harder the last few weeks than they do normally. I was at the office at 8:00 last night, and there was a few people still there. But it's just, these are the times that matter, and we can have some quiet times a little bit later.
Yeah, sure. And in the market where you are, have you seen any shift in property prices, in sort of auction clearance rates and things like that?
Yeah, so we're a national business. So we work pretty much, the states are all pretty similar to us. So even though we're based on the Central Coast and that's where our staff are, our clients are very spread across the country. But from the Central Coast, I guess if we're going to look at that in particular, there hasn't been a shift in prices. There certainly has been people a little bit more cautious. And I think people are, when they're there's some uncertainty, people aren't moving as fast. But I was speaking to an agent a couple of days ago, and he said he had about 25% of the people through his open homes last weekend than he did 2 months before, but it didn't change the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do a quarterly webinar with Tim Lawless from Cotality, and it's interesting because although we've seen in Sydney and Melbourne a little bit of a slowdown, not a decrease, but just a slowdown in the growth, there are other pockets outside of particularly the more affluent that are actually continue to go gangbusters, and then if you look at some of the states, WA continues to go really strong. Brisbane is a fantastic market, and with the Olympics coming up, they're expecting to continue to see that growth there. So we've got a rising interest rate environment. We've got a very uneven property market at the moment. So while some are maybe feeling it, others are seeing it as an opportunity, I suspect.
Yeah, and I think for a broker, it's just a time to have a conversation. It's not going to change. The market's not going to change. There's a feeling of uncertainty that they need to have a conversation about before they move forward. Because people aren't stopping buying and selling. No.
So you're feeling fairly buoyant about the market and bullish.
Yeah.
How are your clients feeling, and are they changing their behaviours at the moment?
Yeah, so I would say, especially from the investor front, like rate rises for investors means restrictions on serviceability. So there's obviously some investors' strategies need to change as rates rise, and people are making moves, trying to preempt some government decisions that might be coming up in the next month. But people make moves based on their own strategy, and I guess our job is to help them or remind them of that strategy and not let these outside noise and influence. And sometimes this media just gets in the way. It's just noise. Like, block it out and think about your strategy. Let's stay on course of what you want to do.
So deal in the here and now, but just be sort of diligent of any changes that might come.
But I would say, we have not seen any slowdown in client behaviour. So no one's stopping buying or investing.
Right.
I think it's more so when I say we're having conversations, it's more people that are worried about, is this going to get somewhere that we can't control? People are worried about the things they don't know about right now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And there's been a lot of media speculation, and quite frankly, I think the government have been testing the water on reducing capital gains discounts and all of that. Are your customers, is that front of mind for them, or are they just getting on with what they do?
Yeah, we actually I put a couple of emails out on our community page recently and asked about whether the CGT difference would change your strategy. And I was pretty surprised, or probably not as surprised I think I am, but not many people would change their strategy based on the changes that they're proposing. Or when I'm saying the changes they're proposing, I'm talking about the Labor government, proposed changes, maybe not the Greens. If that were to come in, that's a different story.
We'll leave them to the side.
Yeah, but I don't think people will change their strategy based on, a change in, tax that they might be paying in 10 years. Most of our clients are long-term investors. They're not property flippers. So I guess if you're a property flipper, that might be different. But the client that we kind of attract are more of a long-term investor. So your long-term strategy isn't changing over a long-term may or may not change government policy.
And are you doing much first home buyer and of interest with the government's first home buyer scheme at the moment?
Yeah, we are, and we have. So in our team, we have sort of segmented brokers. So we do segmentation. You and I remember that from our banking days.
I do. I launched in my Westpac days. We launched the platinum segment for brokers. Yeah.
So we segment. So we have certain brokers that deal with predominantly with investors. We've got and I work with a particular podcast, and we bring in a lot of first home buyers through that forum. But I've got a few brokers that work just with first home buyers, and they might be first home buyers to live in, and they're doing a lot of the government schemes. They're doing the Help to Buy scheme, the 5%. If I'm going to get on my soapbox about the 5% scheme, and this is where I get frustrated, is it's a great scheme. I love anything that will help first home buyers get in, but they're restricting the money that they can leave out, and they're also restricting what they can do with that property. So let's say, and you and I've seen this in so many cycles over the years, people get into little bit of trouble after they buy their first house. And what do? They move back in with mum and dad and rent the house out. Well, if you can't leave a cash buffer out, but you also can't rent that house out because of the restrictions, that's where I foresee potentially some problems. So I think the government scheme is great and we're putting a lot of people into that, but our first home buyer brokers are definitely having the conversation about these are the potential issues. Let's really think about that before we take up the scheme.
I love that you guys are doing it because it's one of my real concerns with the 5% deposit scheme that, and particularly now we're in a rising interest rate environment, it's inevitable that some of these borrowers will get into a little bit of strife, and you as a lender, we want the flexibility to be able to give them options to be able to move back in with mum and dad and maybe rent it out for a period of time. But as a lender, we're left exposed because the scheme falls over at that point.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I love that you guys are doing that and giving that guidance.
There's probably a few clients that we would have maybe encouraged into a different strategy because of that, more of a parental guarantee rather than a government guarantee. And a few of those have already rented their houses out. So it is something that people need to consider.
Yeah. So we've obviously seen interest rates go up. That does naturally put customers under additional strain and some pushes them, further towards that edge. What are you doing with those clients and how are you supporting them and working with them?
Yeah, so I think it's just about, and it's coming back to, I guess, what the client's strategy is and what their needs are. So if you're talking to a first home buyer that may be bought in a lower rate environment, it's a very different conversation to an investor that's trying to hold multiple properties through this time. So, for the first home buyers, it's really about talking about their budget. It's really about, hey, there's the potential that rates are going up. I know you could afford the loan at that, but have a look at your budget and see if you're really allowing that to happen. But for investors, it's making sure there's cash buffers, liquidity in their portfolio. I think a lot of people maybe a few months ago adjusted their portfolio and their lending to make sure their finances was going to weather the storm that may come or may not. But hey, let's make sure you've got the cash buffers to get through what potentially could happen.
Yeah. So it sounds to me that the Sphere model is really the life of the customer as opposed to the pure just transactional or life of loan.
Absolutely. But you need to be able to allow the broker to do that. So you need to be able to put enough people in their team to make sure that they can do that. Because if your average broker, writing and trying to do everything at once, it can get really hard. So I think from my perspective, it's making sure that they've got the ability and time in their day to call that customer.
Yeah, and I suspect actually really knowing your customer, being curious with your customer, provides the right to be able to give that advice and guidance through times like this.
Yeah, and not everybody wants to talk to their mortgage broker at this time, but the ones that do, we need to make sure that they know that we're there for them and that we're approachable. Some people need to be reminded, hey, there's no silly questions and it's okay.
Yeah, and as a lender, we really encourage mortgage brokers to be having those conversations and encouraging their customers, if they are in a little bit of pressure, to contact us. And there's normally a way to navigate through these things. And the hard luck stories, we don't want them. We don't need those either. And so we're really keen to have that engagement.
Yeah, and a good conversation early can stop that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look forward, what advice and steps would you give to other brokerages to navigate through this uncertain time?
Yeah, look, and I was in a meeting the other day and there was a few different brokers and we're just having a chat about how we're going to tackle this. And a few of them were saying, I'm using AI and I'm getting all these emails out and I'm doing this mass contact. And that's great. Mass contact is great. But nothing is going to replace picking up the phone and calling your client. There are clients that want to hear from us at these times. And even if it's just, hey, how are you feeling right now? And I think the only piece of advice I would have is to have some sort of system in place that every client of yours can get a quick phone call.
Is that in system, is that a process, or is that actually you've invested in a CRM that, it allows you to just, sort of automate that approach?
We are using very backward systems. We are not, I want to say that I'm this tech person and it's getting, we're just putting our database and we're just calling them one by one.
Right. Okay. So it really is. It's the old list, and I go down the list and
really
tick this off with the customer. Beautiful. So in that process, have you got a story you can share with us about, reaching out to customers and how you've had, or your team have had a real impact, and changed things for them?
Yeah, so I guess when you talk about, client impact, when we're talking about that proactive contact, and I'm going to go back to COVID. I know this isn't like COVID, but it's that feeling of uncertainty that kind of draws the two together. So in COVID, we're making those calls, and the brokers and I were making, I don't know, it's up to 80 calls a day back in those times, and then we played a game at lunchtime to break it up. But one of the calls I made was to a client that had 2 investment properties and their own home. And as I made the call, they were saying, we're actually just getting ready to sell the investments. We're freaking out, and we're really worried. And I said, tell me more about that. Like, just tell me more about what we're doing, because I'm looking at your notes here from when you bought the properties and you're planning on holding those to retirement. So just what's changed? Has anyone lost their job? And it was just that feeling of anxiety of one of us may lose our job and then the market might crash out, that they were thinking of selling and just making sure that they were safe and didn't have the anxiety. So it's all about the feelings. They didn't want to have the anxiety over the period. But what we did was just did some scenarios for them based on if we got some cash buffers out, and put some cash in an account to make them feel more comfortable about the next bit of time. Because at the moment, the stress is we can't afford to hold these properties if something goes wrong. So let's talk about taking some of that pressure out. They end up holding the properties, but we all know what happened to the property prices just after COVID, and no one lost in this particular instance, they didn't lose their job. They actually had rates go down, and they would have really regretted selling a property at a time because of a feeling of anxiety. So I think those proactive calls are really important, and I think they're just as important now as they were in COVID.
Yeah, so again, it comes back to that engaging, asking the right questions, and then presenting options to your customers, which is no different to how we look at the world as well.
Yeah, and we don't give advice, we give options. So it's about giving the scenarios. So, when someone's deciding whether to do A or B, it feels an easier conversation to sit down and have when you've got the numbers in front of you. So if I walk around my office, the word that is said the most out of any other word is scenario. It's about the scenarios. We get the scenario. So those clients just needed the scenarios that they had available to them so they can sit down and have an informed discussion about their options rather than, making emotional decisions based on, fear.
And what role do partnerships, referral resources, or in both ways, play in that particular process? And have you seen them become more important in times like now or in times like COVID?
Yeah, well, so all of our clients, we talked about the CRM, so all of our clients are databased via the referral partner. So yeah, obviously that makes a huge difference because where the client comes from says a lot about what their needs might be. So, I talked about one of our referral partners that we work with that gives us a lot of first home buyers. We can definitely database that out and call all of those clients. And they're the ones that have, I guess, different needs to, you're a more sophisticated investor or you're, just your average family. They have different needs, but the referral partner is really important. And our mutual respect of the referral partners are really important. We only work with people that have similar, similar views on client service as we do. We're really particular with who we work with, and our referral partners would have the same. Especially our main referral partners will have the same feelings about with us about clients and wanting to do the right thing.
Yeah. So if I was to ask you a bold prediction for the next, I'm not going to say 12 months, but let's just go the next 6 months. What do you think is going to be the most impactful thing that occurs in our market?
Oh, look, I think that people need to be prepared for a more restricted time. Obviously, these costs are going up and things are happening, but I feel that everything's going to be just fine. Like, I feel like everything is going to be just where it is. Property prices are not going to come anywhere close to redacting. I mean, we've got markets inside markets, but I still think the majority of good markets, and you mentioned Brisbane before, I've got a huge amount of clients investing there. I don't see any worries about the next 6 months. I think it's going to be, for property in particular, we have a massive supply issue. So I still think we're going to be continuing to flow on the way that we've been flowing. I think brokers are going to be particularly busy over the next 6 months, and I think we're all going to weather the storm.
Yeah, I tend to agree, because I think we've still got an undersupply in the market. We've still, although we've pulled back a little bit on immigration, but it's interesting that you look at the model of people that come to Australia. They spend their first 2 years renting typically, and then buy after that point. So we've got a whole wave of immigrants when we had record levels that haven't yet bought into the market, and so I think that's going to be a positive sign to ensure that property prices, stay strong moving forward.
Yeah, and I think if there's one market to watch in the next 6 months, it'll be first home buyers.
First home buyers? Good or bad?
Good.
Good?
I think there'll be a huge amount of people entering the
more
market.
of them come back into the market?
I really do, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear, because I think, the more we can do in sensible, practical ways to help first home buyers is really important, because we know that home ownership is actually a pathway to a whole heap of positive signs for society, for individuals, for self-esteem and self-worth.
That is right. So, yeah, I think especially Gen Z in particular really need to be encouraged more than anyone that home ownership is possible for them.
Fantastic. Well, Rachel, I've got to thank you for your time today. Your great insights. I know those that are listening and broader people in the broker would have found them invaluable. And it's also great to catch up again after all these years.
Great to see you too.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe or join the Bluestone community for more insights and updates. And we'll catch you on the next episode. That's a wrap of this episode of It's a Broker Thing, brought to you by Bluestone Home Loans. We love sharing ideas that help you stay ahead, because backing brokers, well, it's a Bluestone thing. Hit subscribe and join us next time for more insights and stories that keep you in the know. This podcast is for general education only and isn't financial, legal or tax advice. Guest views are their own. Bluestone accepts no liability for errors or how you use this information.